Hello all, this is Kevin Bernatz again, and we are back to Hubris, again the turn 1 sort of walkthrough, and we have already done 3 of the recurrent events, and we are ready to draw the next event card. And so this is a immediate event, and this is one that represents a very historical period in time for Macedon where there was a lot of upheaval in the court, and I actually, a friend once said, Macedon, you have to have a certain constitution to play Macedon, and this was a tough period in history for this empire, this kingdom. And one of the things that happened was in Philip's court, his chief minister, basically he had to essentially get rid of Apellis. And let's go back to the event card. So this is Apellis' plot. And so this event card that's added in 218, it's usually drawn on the first turn. It doesn't have to be. It could, if Winter Quarters was drawn after 4 recurrent events, it would actually get pushed to the next turn. Again, that was one of the things I mentioned in the other video. It's things happen in this game, but they don't always happen in the same sequence, and that's, I think, enhances the playability, replayability of it. So in this one, if Philip V is in play, well, he is, he's the king. He has to choose whether to back Apellis or Aratos' faction. If he backs Apellis, he basically removes Aratos, Tarion, and replaces an alliance with a garrison. And then all these alliances in Peloponnese would go away. The alternative is to back Aratos. And in that case, he checks Philip's intrigue. And depending if Tarion and Alejandros, so let's look, so Alejandros is here, he's still in play. And Tarion is here, he's still in play. So you would get a +2 THM checking against his intrigue, and if he's successful, that's the green thumbs up, he would remove Apellis and gets a free alliance somewhere in Peloponnese that's unaligned. Well, in this particular case, we've gotten everything in Peloponnese that's unaligned. This is aligned to the Ptolemy, so he wouldn't be able to affect that. If he fails, bad things happens. Tarion and Alejandros are removed. There's a chance, depending on how badly you fail, that actually Philip gets and Apellis becomes the king. But that's the option we're going to take. That's the historical one where he backed sort of Aratos, or he basically got rid of Apellis. So we need to make a intrigue check. So we look at Philip's intrigue. So his intrigue rating is a 5. Now this is minus his renown. So that means his intrigue is a 4. But he also has, like I said, the +2 THM because both of Tarion and Alejandros are in play. So it's a 6. So effectively he can't fail this. Am I looking at it? Maybe I'm looking at loyalty instead of intrigue. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was looking at loyalty. So his intrigue is a 3, and +2 is a 5. So if he rolls a 6, bad things will happen. He did not. He rolled a 2. So he succeeds in backing Aratos, and what we have is Apellis is removed from play. So here's Apellis. So remove him from play. But now we have to see there's 2 other leaders. Megalias, if you look at his special ability, if Apellis is removed from play through anything other than Ferryman of the Souls, he's also removed. And Leontios, he's another one of Apellis' clique. So, well, Macedon's court is suddenly gotten much more manageable. So now, because the chief minister disappeared, we need to appoint a new chief minister. And in this case, we're going to appoint Tarion. I'll just shift him up, though. It doesn't really matter. Then going back to this card, we could place an alliance in any unaligned place in Peloponnese. Well, again, I said that there's no unaligned places, and so this card is resolved. So we remove it from play, and we move on. So our fourth recurrent event. Now, if you remember, we have 4 recurrent events. So if winter quarters is drawn, it would end the turn. So enemy at the gates. We roll a d6. Get a 1. If Parthenone is not controlled and no troop present in Medea. I think that's the situation we're in. So Parthenone is here. It's not controlled. If you remember, the Seleucids pulled their troop out of Medea. They have a military colonist. I think he's still on. So it's this guy here. So this unit would start in Medea. So he would be present. But they pulled him into Seleucus to do their campaign. So we're going to hit this first bullet. If Parthenone's not controlled and no troop present, ravage an unaligned 1 alignment marker in Medea. So we will ravage Medea, and then there's 1, 2, 3, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, so this, and of course that's the only one that has a THM, so this is of course the hardest one to retake, and that is now unaligned. So this results in the Seleucids for Medea. Where is the Medea card? Right on top here. It's no longer full control. It's going to go down as simple control. Now, it's still worth 1 victory point for them, so the only difference is next tax phase, they would lose 1 revenue. Now we look at the bottom, the game mechanic. So this is the mechanic that sort of ages out leaders. These leaders didn't last indefinitely, especially this era. Death could happen in many ways, shapes, or forms. And not only do you have the end dates of leaders, you also have this. Every leader you're going to roll a 2d6, and if you roll a 12. So, they could fall off their horse. They could get in a bar fight and, get stabbed in the back. There's lots of things that could happen to the various leaders in this era. And so first, I'm just going to look through this. I happen to know that none of the leaders have a end date on the first turn. It's more for later turns. So you look at, Antipatros, his black 183 number up top. That's his end date. 180, 185. Some of the, I think Aratos is, he's 213. Tarion's 212. So these guys are next turn. But no one, I happen to know, there's no one that's this turn. So all we really do is you're going to roll 2d6 for every leader. So Seleucids have 3 leaders. 1, 2, 3. Macedon has 4 leaders. 1, 2, 3, 4. We got a 3, but not a 12. And the Ptolemies have 4 leaders. Okay, we always do. Whenever we roll 11, someone got really sick, but they managed to pull through. So that's the game mechanic, and now we go to activations. So this time it's the Seleucids first, and then the Ptolemies and Macedon. So if you remember, the Seleucids, they tried and failed to take out the rebels, and also note that they're getting near the end of the turn. They know that if winter quarters comes up, the turn's going to end. So they have 2 choices. They can try to retake Medea. But right now, it's not costing them victory points. It's just costing them one talent. Or they can try to take out the rebel. So they're going to try to take out the rebel if they have the money. So remember, if the king keeps a unit with him, he basically is going to pay 1 to keep the unit, or 3 talents to keep the unit, and then another 3 talents to campaign with it. So they need. King gets -3, so they need at least 3 talents. Well, guess what? They don't. So, they need to find a way to get some talents. Well, it's a little risky, but the only way they can really do that is to raise taxes. And so that's what they're going to do. They're going to use their best, Now they want to save their king so he can campaign. So they're going to use their next best administrator. So it's Zeus, who's a 4. So he's going to rotate and activate. He's going to... He has choices. When you raise taxes, go to the raise tax thing. Increase taxes. You can designate 1 or 2 adjacent controlled satrapies. You can't have ravage or already a tax increase. So Babylonia is 7 talents. He could just go after Babylonia. The alternative is he could do both Babylonia and Susiana, but the risk is, of course, if something bad happens, you're going to potentially lose control of these 2. So they're willing to take the risk, so they're going to designate both of these. So his administration rating was 4, and that's basically, you can tell here, that's what the leader needs. And then he just makes a check, and then we're going to consult here. So, it just depends on your success margin. So a 4 would be a success margin of 0, a 5 would be a failure success margin -1, and a 6 would be a failure success margin -2. Now, if there was a troop face up, he'd have a +1. Well, we don't have any troops. That's part of the problem. And so that's what we're looking. So on a 1 to 3, nothing bad happens. 4 to 6, we'll look back at the table and see what happens. So first Babylonia. And of course they rolled a 6. So 6 is a failure of -2 or worse. So we place a ravage marker and a revolt in one aligned place. And then actually we have to roll a second d6. And if we get a 6, Zeus bites the dust. So let's do that first. Oh, so this is not good for the Seleucids. So things have not started out well for the Seleucids on this turn. And just again, this is the type of game where you can make plans, but the plans are always going to be subject to the whims of the cards, of the dice, and you have to be able to respond and adapt appropriately. So in this case, what happens is this becomes ravaged in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So of course it's the capital, so the capital goes in revolt. And much to the Ptolemy's delight, the chief minister has died. So remove from play. So there's a game mechanic where we recognize that if you have too few leaders, it becomes difficult for the kingdoms to accomplish stuff. And so each kingdom actually has 3 replacement leaders. Now these are random draw decks. So you can see the top leader of each. And actually this kind of illustrates they're going to be medium leaders, right? They're not going to be exceptional leaders by any stretch. They're all pretty much, I think these are actually the 3 leaders that everyone has. A combat only leader, a leader that's admin and diplomacy, and then one leader that is a combat and diplomacy. Note he's only got a combat rating of 1, so he's actually worse than having troops alone fighting. But he does allow you to react and do other things because he has the campaign icon. So we draw one of these leaders at random. And so he actually got, it's a decent leader. So he's a 2 combat and 1 siege, and he has a 2 admin. So we have a choice now. We have to fill this chief minister position. We are going to, we're actually going to fill it with this replacement leader for now, because we have a feeling we're going to get a better leader next turn. Generally, new leaders arrive every turn or close to every turn, sometimes more than 1 leader. So you're always adding leaders and replacing leaders when they die naturally or die through events like this. And again, you're sort of trying to do everything and respond to the chaos of the situation. Well, because the chief minister died, they can't even roll here. I mean, there's no ability to roll because the leader is no longer with them. So you can't make an admin check, obviously. So we then move to the next activation. And it is, It is the Ptolemies. So the Ptolemies, while they are laughing at the Seleucids' misfortune, if you remember, they have not had a great deal of fortune themselves. So with the renown of these two leaders negative, they have a couple leaders left. And what they're going to do, this is another special ability of Sisabius. You look at Egyptian Phalanx, second one from the bottom. May activate and pay 1 talent to make this unit available. So that's what they're going to do. He's going to do his last activation. So he's now spent. They will pay 1 talent. And then they get this unit, the Machimor unit, becomes available to muster in Lower Egypt. So they basically add another unit at a small cost. Now we may, in playtesting, increase that. We're still uncertain if 1 talent is a suitable cost or if we need to bump that up. And that's the Ptolemy activation. And then we go to Macedon. So Macedon's king is spent. But look at his special ability. When the Winter Quarters card is revealed, Philip, if king, can campaign once even if he's spent. Can't initiate war, but remember, attacking an alliance is not an initiation of war. So he knows that he's going to get one more whack at subduing Sparta, if he has the money. But remember, the king campaigning with just 1 unit effectively costs, the value -3. So if he's in a 3 satrapy, it's a free campaign. So they're looking at what other options they have. And so they have Aratos, who can do diplomacy. Alejandros, who's already out on the map. Remember, he did that glorious taking of Central Greece. And actually, you know what? They want to take care of Aetolia. They want to do some diplomacy to try to take Aetolia. So they look at Aratos, who's their best diplomat. He's a 4. But he does have limits. And may only use diplomacy in Peloponnese and Central Greece. So, unfortunately, Aetolia is in Western Greece, so he can't really help. So we're going to have to use Tarion. So he also actually has some limits. Let me see. So diplomacy, yeah, Central Greece and Western Greece. So he can do diplomacy. He's going to have a 2 rating. And we're actually going to spend the 3 talents. So it's 1 normally for diplomacy, +2 if you want, +1. And so that's what we're going to do. So he's going to have a 3 diplomacy rating to try to do diplomacy in Western Greece. Now this THM -2 only applies to campaigns when you're trying to subdue them by force, not when you're sweet talking them. So we're gonna see how sweet Torian can be. So 2 rolls needing 3s. So he got the 1. So what that does is it allows Macedon to place a alliance in Western Greece. And so what that accomplishes is, when you get to go back to this card here, remember this is a recurrent event, it's going to occur every turn. But instead of rolling on the D6 portion, it just says if there's an alliance in Aetolia, you're going to remove it. So it's a little bit of a buffer to preventing the worst effects of that card. And again, since that card could potentially come up every turn, this is something Macedon may have to do every turn to keep trying to pacify these Aetolians. The other thing it does, it gives them full control of Western Greece. Now, it's all by alliances, so we're going to turn to the long side of the card. But it still doesn't change their VPs. It's still half VP. And actually, in this case, it doesn't even change their treasury. But they do have full control of this satrapy now. So let me put that up there. And again, Rome is at peace, so nothing happens for Rome. And then we draw the next card. And how about that? So we are done with the turn. Because Winter Quarters came up, and there are at least 4 recurrent events, there are actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards that are going to get basically pushed to the next turn. Now, this one here and this one are the other recurrent events. I'll just draw them here just to show them to you. So these are the other 2 recurrent events that could occur every turn. But again, you're only guaranteed 4 out of every 6. So in this case, you notice intrigues at court. That we never had that this turn. If that had come up early, Macedon with their large court probably would have had troubles. Scridileas, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, doesn't have a game mechanic, but it allows a bid from all the kingdoms, and you get use of this pirate that operates around this the seas bordering basically Asia Minor. And then revolt, if there is a revolt on the map, which we have now, this revolt spreads, causes a bunch of problems. There's also a revolt in a random place, but you read Seleucus, Babylonia, Thebaid, Lower Egypt. I mean, these are pretty important satrapies in the game, and so there's always sort of trouble that someone has to deal with. You're always responding to trouble. But again, these didn't actually come up, so they would be in the deck and they would go to the next turn. Winter quarters, remember, the only thing that, I'm not going to go through the whole winter quarters or the whole end of the turn phase, but I do want to resolve Philip's special campaign. Because Apellis is no longer around, remember, Apellis sort of prevented this special ability. He kept Philip from really being the best that he could be. So Philip is going to campaign in Peloponnese. He's targeting Sparta. There's no Spartan unit available. Let's see. The Ptolemaic court, there's nothing for... No, it's not a city, so they can't strengthen defenses. So there's basically nothing the Ptolemies can do about this. So the cost is 3, minus 3 for being led by the king, so the cost is 0. There's no combat because there's no troops present. So that also means he can't increase his renown. And so all that happens is he gets 4 rolls. Well, he can't plunder because it's already ravaged, and probably wouldn't want to plunder his own satrapy anyways. So he's just going to do 4 subjugation rolls. So remember, there's the THM minus 1. Subjugations use the battle rating. That's that 4. So he needs 4 rolls, needing 3s or less. And he needs at least 1 success. 1, 2, 3, 4. So he managed 2 successes. All I really needed was 1. So he replaces this with a Macedon alliance. Remember, tribes can only take alliances. Only cities are allowed garrisons or alliances. And Peloponnese now becomes fully controlled. Oops, I don't mean to flip it. Fully controlled. And it's controlled mostly by alliances, so we use the longer side. You look at the satrapy card, difference in VPs for Macedon, that's going to be the purple number. They go from 1 to 2 when they go from simple to full control. And they go from 2 to 3 for taxes for next turn. So that does increase their VPs by 1. So let's just take care of that. So the territorial VPs go up by 1. Territorial VP by 1. And I'll just briefly describe what would be the end of the turn. I'm not going to go through it. But for the winter quarters phase, if there's any pending events down at the bottom here, so one of the events could be Rome at war with Illyria, or there's an event where these armies here rise up and try to basically cause trouble in Peloponnese, and Western Greece. So none are in place, so we wouldn't have any of that. We do have to resolve the war. So in this case, we do have this peace talk. So in this peace talk, it does say this war is not considered to be ongoing during the upcoming winter quarters and revenues phase. So this war will always continue. So it's not always in the Ptolemies' best interest to do this peace talk, because if they wanted the war to end, Wars and peace. two kings may make peace at any time. So this war will continue unless the two kings can agree to make peace. But if they don't, there's no negatives. Normally, if a war is continuing more than one turn, there can be some negatives, including loss of victory points, revolts in two places, revolt in one, here's two places, revolt. So, I think I mentioned this in one of the other videos, wars really weren't long in this period. They were quick, decisive, one king would sue for peace, and life would go on. And the peaces were between the kings. So as long as that king lived, they took this peace very seriously. They would not do anything to start another war with that kingdom. Now, if the king died, all bets were off. Just something that was how this period worked, how this period of time, how these kings felt about, this sworn oath of a peace. In this particular case, again, I'm stopping here, so I'm not really going to worry about the peace between the Seleucids and the Ptolemies. Let's just assume that it continues. Check for automatic victory. Automatic victory is if anyone has 30 victory points. Well, you can see we're not really close to that. And next, units return home, including from the dispersed blocks. So this is where all these units that have been dispersed, the royal units, either the siege train or the royal army, they would basically go back to the appropriate force pool, and then at the start of the next turn they could go back out on the map. So these two units will always start every turn on the map. Same with all these guys. Now for the mercenaries, which are here, and you flip them, and actually for the module I can just say return home, and they all end up going back where they belong. And the same with these guys. So they would flip. These are the colonists. So they would all return home. So you can see now there's two units that the Ptolemies can bring in Lower Egypt due to that one activation, that Egyptian phalanx. If there's strength and defense markers, they all come off the map. So all these strength and defense markers would go back to the Seleucid force pool. I don't remember if there's any other ones. I don't think so. All these blocks would go back to courts. And I think the only other ones are over on Macedon. Oops. So these would go to the Macedon court. And what's the last thing? So then the last thing is you straighten up the leader card, so everyone is basically just setting the table for next turn. All these guys who are spent would become, rotated again. All these, this guy would go to the force pool and then out to the map. This guy would go back to the back home at Peloponnese, so he's available next turn. I'm not going to do that with the other, but saying, you're basically, setting the table for next turn. These guys would go home, so he's available to be hired next turn. And then, like I said, the treasure. So this is sort of a game mechanic to enforce people to use the money that they have. So at the end of every turn, you're going to lose half of everything that you have remaining. So there's no real benefit to saving a ton of money to go to the next turn. And that's the first turn. You can see it ended very close. Everyone is within 3 VPs of each other, and that's sort of what we see a lot. I mean, a lot depends on how this first clash between the Ptolemies and Seleucids go. If Ptolemy had gotten a little bit better results in Seleucus, maybe he controls some of this. Maybe he just withdraws when Atticus comes into Seleucus, so he doesn't end up with this, -2 for him and +4 for Seleucus. So there's a larger difference in VPs. Macedon has done fairly well. I mean, they got fairly lucky to get all of Central Greece. Peloponnese is generally one of their targets, so that's not that unusual for them to get that. But the problem with the Macedon player is these guys right here. So they're the ones that are closest to Rome. They're the ones that are going to start rubbing up against Rome quickly. And Rome is the 800-pound gorilla. So what happens will, Macedon can do well, as you can see. I mean, they're in second place. They've advanced their position quite a bit, and they have very good leaders. They have very good military leaders. They have good admin leaders. They'll end up getting good diplomats, but they have to deal with Rome first. And then once Rome and Macedon clash, then the next person who deals with Rome is the person who leads in VPs. In all likelihood, it's not a guarantee, but that's generally how the game mechanic works. Is Rome likes to target the biggest bully on the block, and it's a nice mechanic that Morgaine has. Now we're still working on all the specifics during playtesting. We're still working on solitaire rules. I mean, there are, let me see, just quickly show you. So there's special 2-player cards that if you are playing just as 2-player, it's a non-player Macedon. We have 2 cards that would replace the Aetolian Ambitions card, and this one replaces card number 4, which, if I remember, I don't actually remember which one that is. Let me see, did we draw card number 4? I think we did. I think it's this one, right? Yeah, so Northern Border. So it would replace this card, and it has very specific game mechanics to account for Macedon being a non-player. And so that's, again, the solo and the 2-player rules are still in development, but the game definitely will have them. And hopefully this has been a good intro to Hubris for you.